I'm 32, and I think one of the strangest things about a relationship ending is that sometimes the grief is real, but the relief is louder. That has been the hardest part to admit, not because I didn't love my wife. I did for years, deeply, patiently, in the kind of way that makes you keep explaining away things that are slowly burning you out because the person beside you still looks from the outside like someone worth defending. But once she moved out, the house changed so fast it almost felt like a second person had left with her. The noise dropped, the mess dropped, the tension dropped, even my grocery bill dropped. And I realized with a level of shame I still haven't fully worked through that I had not just been married, I had been absorbing. My wife's name is Camille. She's 33. We were together for almost 9 years, married for 6. We also have a daughter, Ava, who is 4 and somehow manages to be both the best part of my life and the clearest witness to how much was wrong in my marriage long before I had the courage to call it that. Before anyone decides I am just one more husband running to the internet to criticize his wife for not being some perfect mother while he hides in an office all day, let me be fair. Camille is not lazy. She is not stupid. She is not heartless. She is, in many parts of life, magnetic. She plans beautiful trips, hosts birthdays that look like magazine spreads, finds little hidden restaurants in other cities, keeps group chats alive, remembers everybody's allergies, favorite colors, and anniversaries. She can walk into a room full of strangers and leave with 6 new numbers and a brunch invitation. That's part of why this took me so long to name. Because when someone is vibrant and competent everywhere else, it becomes very difficult to say out loud, she is disappearing inside our actual home. I work in software infrastructure from home. I have for years. Flexible hours, decent pay, enough autonomy that I can stop in the middle of the day if I absolutely have to, which sounds like a blessing until you realize the world starts assuming your availability is infinite just because your desk is 10 steps from the kitchen. Camille works about 10 hours a week as a freelance interpreter and event liaison. It's good work, honestly. Interesting work. She gets to travel occasionally, do cultural events, meet people. I was proud of her when she got it because it seemed to light her up in a way ordinary jobs never had. Before we had Ava, we talked a lot about how we wanted to structure our lives. Camille said she wanted to be the primary parent if we ever had children. She said she was not deeply career driven, that she liked the idea of building a warm home life, that flexibility mattered more to her than climbing anything. I remember making sure over and over that she felt free. I told her I was genuinely okay if we never had children. I told her I did not want her deciding motherhood because she thought it was the price of loving me. I meant that. I still mean that. She chose this. That matters to me, maybe more than it should, because sometimes when people tell this story back to me, they flatten everything into she was overwhelmed. She needed help. Yes, she was overwhelmed. But she also insisted repeatedly that this was the life she wanted while refusing most of the arrangements that might actually have made it sustainable. The problem started slowly after Ava was born. At first, I thought we were just in the fog everybody warns you about. No sleep, no rhythm, no clue what normal even means anymore. Babies make chaos feel universal, so you stop asking whether what is happening is temporary or foundational because you are too tired to tell the difference. But Ava got older, and certain patterns did not ease. They hardened. Camille got easily overstimulated by ordinary parenting tasks. Tiny messes could set her off. A spilled juice cup, a missed nap, a toy left in the wrong room, a question repeated 3 times by a 4 year old whose whole job is basically repeating things until adulthood collapses around her. There were afternoons I would be upstairs in meetings, headset on, trying to explain server issues to clients, and I could hear Camille's voice downstairs go flat and sharp over something as small as Ava taking too long to put on her shoes. Sometimes I would step out of calls and find our daughter parked in front of the television for what looked like the third hour in a row while Camille sat on the couch staring at her own phone like she had mentally checked out of the room. If I suggested a walk, a park trip, or some activity, Camille would usually say yes too fast, like a person being offered temporary release from a shift she never really wanted to be on in the first place. That was the first thing that started eating at my desire for her, though I did not admit it at the time. I was exhausted all day from work, then stepping out to regulate the emotional temperature of the house, then taking Ava to dance, swimming, or the park, because if I didn't, the whole afternoon would calcify into snacks, cartoons, and small resentments. Meanwhile, at night, Camille still wanted closeness, sometimes sex, sometimes affection, sometimes just the easy warmth of the marriage that assumes the day has been shared rather than survived by separate people in adjacent rooms. And I could not explain to myself why I had started feeling this strange internal resistance. It was not that I found her unattractive. It was that I no longer felt like I was meeting my partner in the evening. I felt like I was clocking out of one full time job and walking directly into another. Then there was the house. I genuinely did not understand until she left how much of my physical energy was disappearing into tiny maintenance tasks. Camille changed clothes constantly, 3 outfits on some days, workout clothes, then lounge clothes, then actually cute clothes if she decided to meet someone for coffee, towels everywhere, mugs everywhere, half finished sparkling waters on windowsills like decorative evidence that hydration had briefly occurred. The kitchen would be clean at night and inexplicably destroyed by mid morning. Cabinets left open, yogurt lids stuck to the counter, toddler snack debris somehow reaching rooms no child had entered that day. I used to think this was just normal family mess, and maybe some of it is. But when she moved out, the house did not become pristine. It became manageable. That distinction wrecked me because Ava is still here half the week. She is still 4. She still sheds stickers and crumbs and tiny socks with supernatural skill. And yet somehow I am no longer doing 2 loads of laundry every day. The sink is not full by noon. Food I buy remains in the fridge long enough for me to eat it. My nicer shampoo has stopped vanishing. The duvet stays on the bed. The bathroom stays tolerable. There is something incredibly humiliating about discovering that your piece was being eaten alive by 1,000 things you had trained yourself to call minor. The hardest part, though, was parenting. Ava loves her mother. That has always been true. But she comes to me for almost everything: questions, comfort, snacks, scraped knees, bath time, night fears, decision making, homework prep. Now that preschool keeps sending home these little activity sheets that apparently require the executive function of a minor project manager. At first, I told myself that was just because I worked from home. That proximity naturally makes one parent more accessible. But then I started noticing the look Ava got when she approached Camille with something uncertain. It was not fear exactly, more like anticipation, the kind of tiny body brace children do when they are not sure whether they are about to be helped or snapped at. Once I noticed that, I could not stop noticing it. We did talk about it, many times. We even did therapy. Camille said she knew she was struggling. She said motherhood did not come naturally to her. She said her own mother had been chronically ill and emotionally inconsistent, so she had no model for this. She said she felt trapped by repetition, overstimulated by noise, and guilty all the time, which made her defensive before anybody even opened their mouth. All of that made sense. And I really did try to respond with compassion. I took over evenings, booked activities, researched private schools, set up play dates, handled doctor appointments, shifted my work calendar around field trips and pickup times. Not because I am a saint, because somebody had to do it. And because when I looked at my daughter, all I could think was, she gets one childhood. I am not letting burnout become the wallpaper of it if I can do anything about it. What I did not say out loud for a long time was that Camille also seemed most alive when she was away from us. Send her to an interpreting gig with a packed schedule, difficult personalities, and international guests, and suddenly she was focused, charming, energized. Let her plan a weekend trip for friends, and she turned into a machine of competence. But ask her to spend 6 ordinary hours at home with our child, and she would unravel over crayons and snack wrappers and the fact that kids apparently want things every 15 seconds. That contrast started making me resentful in a way I hated, because it is one thing to struggle, it is another to watch the person you love light up everywhere except the life you are building together. And resentment is corrosive in marriage because it makes tenderness feel dishonest. The breaking point was not dramatic. No giant fight, no shattered plate, no affair text glowing in the dark. It was a Tuesday. I was on a long client call upstairs when I heard Ava crying downstairs in that deep, wounded way that means something emotionally real has happened, not just a bumped knee. I muted myself, went down, and found Camille in the kitchen with both hands pressed to the counter, eyes shut, while Ava sat on the floor sobbing because she had spilled cereal and Camille had snapped. For 5 minutes, can nothing be difficult? Camille looked at me like she was the one drowning. Ava looked at me like she was waiting to see whether I would make the room safe again. And something inside me went very still because I realized I was no longer asking whether Camille was okay. I was constantly evaluating whether the house was okay around Camille. That is not a marriage. That is risk management. I took Ava to the park, bought her ice cream before dinner, because some rules stop mattering when your child has been cried out by breakfast. And while she ran in circles around a climbing frame, telling another little girl that her dad could push super high, I sat on a bench and felt this awful clarity settle over me. I was burned out, not vaguely, not philosophically, systemically. I was working full time, parenting full time in all the emotionally reliable ways, managing the house, managing Camille's feelings about the house, managing the atmosphere around Ava, managing my own guilt for even having these thoughts, because good husbands are supposed to be patient and good fathers are supposed to protect everybody, not quietly reach a point where the idea of being alone with their child feels easier than being married. That last realization was the one I could not look away from because it was true. Whenever Camille traveled for work, life got simpler, still busy, still tiring, but simpler, cleaner, kinder, predictable. And I hated how much relief I felt when she was gone. That night, after Ava was asleep, I finally said the sentence I had been circling for months. I told Camille I did not think we were functioning like partners anymore. She got angry immediately, then hurt, then practical, then angry again. She said I was judging her for struggling. She said I was making her worst fear come true, which was that she was failing at motherhood and now apparently as a wife too. She said, I had no idea what it felt like to be the default parent all day. That almost made me laugh, not because it was funny, but because it was so far from how our actual life felt that I briefly wondered whether we had been living in parallel marriages. I said, you are with her more hours. That is not the same as carrying more of her life. And if you want to know what line finally detonated us, that was probably it. She cried for nearly an hour. I sat there and felt like a monster and a witness at the same time, because the cruel part was that I did love her. Still, I could see how overwhelmed she was. I could see how shame was eating her alive and making her sharper, smaller, more defensive. But love stops being enough when it becomes the argument for why one person should keep absorbing more than they can survive. She asked if I wanted her to leave. I said I did not know what I wanted, except that I could not keep doing the marriage exactly like this. 2 weeks later, after several more brutal conversations and one therapy session where our therapist looked more tired than either of us, Camille moved into a furnished rental across town. Not forever, we said then. Not necessarily, just space. Space has a way of telling the truth faster than arguments do. Update 1. It has been 6 weeks. We are doing a rough version of co parenting. Ava goes between houses. Camille is calmer with her in smaller doses, which is both encouraging and heartbreaking. The house is still quieter. My budget is noticeably lower. Laundry no longer feels like a side hustle. And the smallest details keep undoing me. The fact that I can open the fridge and the leftovers I packed for lunch are still there. The fact that the sink is clean in the morning if I cleaned it at night. The fact that my expensive body wash is lasting longer than 3 days. These sound like petty things until you realize how much daily resentment is built from exactly that kind of repetition. Meanwhile, my sex drive has not returned in the romantic, marriage saving way I secretly worried it might if I just got enough rest. What has returned is something simpler: my nervous system. I sleep more deeply. I feel less braced. I laugh more easily with Ava. That is not nothing. Update 2. Camille says the separation has made her realize how much she was struggling. She says she did not understand how defensive she had become. She says she misses us. I believe all of that, but I am learning that insight is not the same thing as repair. I think for years I treated exhaustion like a scheduling problem. If I just optimized enough, supported enough, anticipated enough, then maybe our life would finally become manageable for both of us. But some problems are not logistical, some are structural. And the structure of our marriage had become this: Camille gets overwhelmed, I compensate, then everyone praises me for being such a patient husband while quietly expecting me to keep doing it forever. I do not want that life back, at least not in its old form. That truth still makes me sad. I've also had to sit with one especially ugly feeling: relief. Relief that no one is eating through the week's groceries in 2 days while complaining there is nothing to snack on. Relief that the bathroom sink is not full of hair product sludge and toothpaste ribbons. Relief that Ava now has at least one house where the emotional weather stays predictable. Relief that when someone knocks on my office door during work, it is because my daughter wants help opening markers, not because my spouse is one noise away from melting down. That relief does not cancel out grief, but it does tell the truth. And I think the sentence I keep coming back to is this: I did not stop wanting my wife because she struggled. I stopped feeling close to her because I was no longer allowed to struggle too. That is a brutal thing to write, but it is honest. For years, every ounce of empathy flowed in one direction, every accommodation, every adjustment, every workaround. And if I got tired enough to say so, I was not a man telling the truth about burnout. I was someone making a vulnerable woman feel worse. I do not know if our marriage survives this. Maybe it does. Maybe it becomes one of those relationships people describe later with words like complicated and loving and impossible. What I do know is that my daughter deserves at least one parent who is not silently drowning while insisting everything is fine. And I deserve a life where love is not measured by how much of myself I can keep shaving off before there is nothing left but function. That used to sound selfish to me. Now it sounds like the beginning of being honest.